Hi, I'm Larry Levin, and with me is Editor-in-Chief Emeritus Bob Cohn. We're here for another edition of Cop Talk. So today we're going to start out talking internationally.
Okay, good.
And about a special guest we had in town this week, the longtime NBC correspondent Martin Fletcher. So he was here at the book festival and at our publishers event, and he indicated in response to a question that he doesn't think Israel should or will act unilaterally against Iran as that nation pursues nuclear capability. Do you agree? And then do you think that this week's explosion at an Iranian military base that killed 17, including a missile expert, was the work of the Israelis?
I really do believe that the explosion, which took out 17 key members of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, including their long-range missile expert, was the work of Mossad. And if it was not the work of Mossad, I think that Mossad would like them, the Iranians, to think it was their work. And if you remember, a few weeks back, there were a couple of nuclear scientists who were killed, one shot from a motorcycle. And again, I'm not trying to play James Bond here, but Israel may be trying to take kind of an incremental approach. There was also the Stuxnet, they call it, the computer virus.
Yeah, the next iteration of the computer virus.
So there are steps in between an outright airstrike against using these bunker buster bombs. But I do think that it is more on the table now than it was even 6 months ago.
In a related manner, seems like the world's superpowers, including China and Russia, have come on board with at least a watered-down resolution condemning Iran's intentions with respect to nuclear weaponry. Even in a watered-down form, is it important that these countries who have been very resistant in the past come on board to just say something about the matter? I mean, Russia gets a huge amount of its oil from Iran.
Yes.
China too, and also China tends to take the view that they don't want to bother any other country because they figure they'll get bothered in return. So what does this mean when they come on board?
Yeah, getting Russia and China and getting a unanimous resolution through the Security Council is meaningful as an additional notch in putting pressure on the Iranian regime. Problem is they haven't responded to that kind of pressure at all over the past 10 years. And what happens is that they get the resolution passed, and then they call the inspectors back in, and they resume these multilateral talks. And then in between times, they continue their campaign to develop nuclear weapons.
Continuing on about Russia and China.
Yes.
This current administration in the United States has much more of a multinationalist approach compared to the previous administration's and unilateral approach to foreign affairs, and believing that the U.S. has to be front and center. Do you believe that the change in the approach under Secretary of State Clinton and this administration is making any sort of difference?
Well, I think it has been vindicated by events. I was somewhat critical of the slow response to what was going on in Libya, but they had the League of Arab States, all 22 members, or most of them, voted in favor of creating a no-fly zone. Mm-hmm. Then they brought NATO on board, and it also had a UN kind of sanction. Now, Gaddafi was universally reviled, and that was certainly more like the George H.W. Bush approach, where the first Bush assembled a huge coalition against Saddam Hussein. The younger Bush did act in a unilateralist cowboy diplomacy way, and I think that the approach being used currently is far preferable than the United States going it entirely alone.
Let's talk about Arab Spring for a minute. Now that we've seen what's happened in Libya with the death of Muammar Gaddafi, we're seeing what's happening in Syria with the apparent close to toppling of the government. Can you start to see any patterns that you can kind of weave together, look at what might happen in the future?
There's a general agreement that there is no one size fits all, but some of the trends, Gaddafi was really a bad guy, much worse than Mubarak. Mubarak actually was a mixed picture, and he's gone. Assad seems to be on the way out. Even Turkey has turned against him. So those are favorable trends that are occurring.
And Iran has started to lose some of its traditional allies.
Exactly. Now, getting back to the multilateralist approach, if the Islamic Council, that's 89 nations, comes on board in some way, is condemning Iran, those folks are not suicidal, whereas the Iranian regime is extremely dangerous in that regard.
Now, in Egypt, unfortunately, we're seeing the military more entrenched. They were talking about ceding to the elected representatives, but now they're saying that they don't see anything in that regard until 2013. Are they just continuing to buy time so they can stay in power perpetually?
I think they are absolutely trying to perpetuate themselves in power. And as Martin Fletcher pointed out, every ruler of Egypt since 1952 has come directly from the army. And it does appear that they're digging in their heels for a long-term
So
stay.
really nothing new under the sun.
No. It's actually worse because at least Mubarak was somewhat of a moderating force, whereas these guys are strictly military guys. And
I have one domestic question for you this week, which is the Penn State scandal. Obviously, it's terrible. There's not much to debate there. It's just ugly, it's rotten, and it makes you feel queasy even talking about it. But it turns out that the fired president of Penn State, Graham Spanier, was Jewish and involved in Hillel on campus. And my question is, when does Jewishness make a difference in a story like this? Is it something to talk about or not something to talk
well,
about?
it certainly made a difference if there are alleged activities of this nature, this horrific nature, that would occur in a Jewish institution, in a day school or at a camp, or among some of the synagogues and day schools, especially in the New York area. That it certainly, there's a real importance of promptly reporting these things, not only to the religious authorities or the Bet Din or in the case of the Catholic Church, to the Archbishop, but to the civil authorities, to the police.
But let me ask you, even in the case of this public institution, does someone who has a Jewish upbringing and is living in a Jewish way, have a moral obligation to report? And is it a failure of Jewish principles when they fail to report?
It's a mixed picture because there is a strong Jewish compulsion to resolve internal problems internally. On the other hand, sometimes these rabbinical courts, and sometimes when things are referred to a church thing, in the case of the Catholic Church, they serve as an instrument to cover it up. So it's increasingly obvious that the morally Jewish thing to do is to bring in the police, the outside authorities.
Can you and I agree that in criminal matters, there really is no place to try and deal with it in a private way? Because a private court like a Jewish Bet Din,
yes,
can serve the same purpose as an arbitrator or a mediator. But once you're talking about criminal acts, you're talking about violations against society.
I completely agree. Even if it's an instance of a confession to a priest or a rabbi, there is an obligation to not use it as an instrument to cover up a crime.
Thank you, and we'll see you next time on Cup Talk.